Hi, welcome to this roundtable. As you can see, Laura is just filling in some of the quadrants. Feel free to come off of mute and ask any questions or vocalize any feedback that you might have. Thank you.
I just wanted to pop on to say welcome.
Hey Laura, I found the questions that were asked during the starter pulse pack. So I'm gonna post it in the chat, and I need to see who asked this question. So I think it was Jane, and she might have asked, has there been discussion around different models of consent and technologies that can enable participants to understand where their data are being used as part of that consent process? I'm gonna paste this in the Zoom chat.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-oh. I don't know why I cannot see the chat.
I don't believe we have chat here because we were trying to contain it to the platform, Shisa.
Oh, got it. All right, so I'll put it. So since she's on that end, she won't be able to see it, right?
If you could pop it in an email, we could do it that way.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions, and then the other one, well, his comment was he completely agrees that the starter pack concept fits very nicely with the code in a box idea that was discussed in David Glazer's session.
That was Jeff Ginsburg?
Yes, that was Jeff.
Yeah, okay.
And then someone, I think Melanie, dropped a link to a paper. I'm gonna figure out what that paper is about because I did not click on that. But I wish I could be of more help. I was really trying to run through every session. So it's trying to get a hold of what everyone is discussing.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm gonna send you an email now. I see there's someone else in the room. I'm not sure how to pronounce that last name. Did you want to share how to pronounce your name? It's in Changui.
Hi, Chisholm. This is Changui.
Hi, Changui. How are you?
Thank you. And you?
Good. Do you want to share where you're from, and your interest in this session, and that way, because Laura is she's the one of the co-chairs, I don't know the right term for it, of this working group. And so she's already started working in the quadrant based on what was already planned in the strategic plan for this policy working group. So it would be great to hear where you're tuning in from and your interest in this space and any ideas.
So I am a bioethics researcher. I'm based at the University of Cape Town in South Africa. And I think recently, like a week or two ago, I sent a request to join the policies working group.
Okay.
So when I saw the stream, and I thought.
Sorry, there's background noise, right? You said that you sent a request to join the policy working group, and then you were saying something else?
Yeah, so I was saying when I saw the stream, then I thought I should just come
perfect.
to it.
Okay.
Am I in the wrong place?
No, you're in the right place.
Wonderful.
Laura, I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself and also just kind of giving her a brief on what I guess has happened in the policy working group to this point.
I think I can certainly introduce myself and we'll give an incredibly high level overview of the policy working group so that we can keep working on some of the other activities for the quadrant for the report out that will happen in a half an hour. So, but very glad to hear about your interest in joining the group, and we will certainly follow up with you to make sure that you are added to our listservs, and we are planning right now for scheduling the meetings in the new year. And so we'll make sure that you are included in that so that we can find times that hopefully are manageable for you, though we do struggle to hit the times across the entire world, but we have our other co-chairs from South Africa. And so hopefully we will be close to times that will work for you. But we have been working for several years, and at least as was referenced in the opening of the summit, which I'm not sure if you were able to attend, part of the early work of the group was around building some core policies and policy principles for how IHCC would come together as an organization to work together. So we had a policy for publications and what expectations would be for collaborative projects through IHCC around publications and authorship for publications, et cetera, develop some resources to support projects and how to have those conversations and establish upfront the expectations. We also worked through some guidelines around engaging with industry in different ways that could be transparent and promote optimal benefit for the projects, for the partners, as well as, again, making sure that we were completely clear and free of any perceptions of conflicts. And so any participants in those cohorts that was looking at what IHCC was doing in this space understood the roles and responsibilities of every party in any collaborative activity, whether they were from the private sector or the public sector. And then finally, some core principles around data sharing, recognizing the vast array of policies that exist across all of our member cohorts, and trying to respect where every cohort was in order to meet them where they were for these collaborations. And what we have been doing since then is really about trying to build from that base of meeting our member cohorts where they are as IHCC projects form and are funded, so that we can ideally get to a point where, and what we've talked about, as I understand it at the summit around the starter pack, is build ways to enable and empower our projects to be efficient in managing the questions around policy relevant agreements, to find those common lanes where our member cohorts can come together, share data, conduct strong quality science that can return new knowledge to the field, and again, optimally, as is the point of all of this, benefit for the participants around the world in terms of how that knowledge might be used to inform health. So that is sort of the concept behind why we exist as a working group and what we're intending to do. And what we've talked about at this group, again, is trying to get very practical and concrete in building those enabling tools for our member cohorts to come together through our collaborations. And also, of course, in talking about that, we will identify tools and resources that are needed for cohorts as individuals, for capacity building in the policy realm, for cohorts where and if needed, as well as things that we can share to the cohort in a box idea that was also talked about for a cohort-based focus versus a collaboration-based focus, just where to find things so that we're not all recreating the wheels, but we're understanding what wheels are already out there, how to adapt them to our particular situation so that they, work on our roads, if you will. So that's the overview. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, but again, very glad to hear about your interest, and we would love to bring you in and plug you into many of these projects, because what this takes and is reliant upon is the people out in IHCC and out in the field to participate in and contribute their expertise so that what we put together is relevant and resonant with the needs.
Thank you, Laura. That was such a great high-level overview of what's being done as a working group. So, Nchangwi, feel free to chime in. I see that, Laura, you're working on the actionable priorities for the next couple of months.
Yes.
Okay. Are you working backwards?
I'm working with what I know.
Okay, got it. That makes sense.
So,
That makes sense. makes sense. That makes sense. It looks based on what I'm seeing, that looks like exactly what has been in the discussions. So hi, Scott.
Laura, we have some additional participants. I see Scott's in, Peter just joined as well. If anyone would like to come off mute and give any feedback or remarks, please feel free to do so.
Great. I am not seeing them, but I'll change there. I can tell they're here. Hi, Scott and Peter.
I did check in with you guys and see.
One hint I've learned is that as you change from session to session, your audio and video settings revert to system-based. So if you have an external webcam, it turns that off and turns on. If you have a laptop like me, the camera that's folded up inside and makes everything black, and the microphone that doesn't work either. So just that's a useful hint for people that are trying to talk or have themselves seen. So yeah, Laura, I think one of the things that we need to think about for this particular work group is membership, like a membership drive. Is the best terminology I can think of, and I think these breakouts are an example of that. We tend to get a few people. I've gone to the other sessions, and there's groups of 15 and growing numbers of individuals in them working away. So I know there's people out there that are interested in policy, but we just need to reach them and get them the message that we have a work group that's working in this area, that we welcome them to join and be involved, that we meet on some sort of a regular frequency, that they can hopefully.
Yes, I was going to suggest we have a meeting about that, because we've talked about several strategies to do outreach, and I'm not sure that they've come forward. And so maybe we can follow up after the meeting to find out if the strategies we proposed before were not feasible, or other ideas that maybe have come up through the summit, because I agree that it's an ongoing challenge. And
I just think that could be a priority for the next 6 to 12 months to try and build up this work group a little bit through some strategy. And I'm not proposing the strategy now, we need to talk about it, but it's going to be essential for the sustainability of doing this. Now, we have talked, and Peter can comment on this too, that our other program, our G2MC, our global genomic medicine program, which is more pharmacogenetic and clinical implementation oriented, also has a policy group.
They do. They also struggle with the exact same thing last time I was engaged with them.
Yeah, but maybe combined we could become sort of go from an island nation to at least part of a continent or something.
So I think
it's just a thought.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the whole idea that Nikki was describing yesterday's global policy forum, because my sense is we're talking about IHCC and G2MC. There's a dozen organizations where regulatory and ethics, LC type discussions, policy type discussions take place. And I think the same people tend to get asked to be in many places at the same time. So I think one of the things we should do within IHCC and G2MC is a specific, we're not trying to be the only meeting place for the genomics community discussing these topics. We know we've got others working alongside us, but what is it specifically for IHCC members? And I know what we did in GA4GH is reach out to each one of our 24 driver projects and say, who
Right,
is
Peter, that's
your
what I've been
regulator?
trying to do for years, because I agree, we do not need to recapitulate the forums that are out there already. I think we need to be very IHCC specific and focused on our IHCC projects and what folks need to come together to collaborate. I have not been successful in engaging any of our scientific projects. And I think that is fundamental, and it needs to be fundamental to our strategy in terms of getting people to join this group. We need people from the member cohorts because they are the ones that have the information on the needs. And that is where we can make a unique contribution.
Similar number in the atlas, we should have 44 names from who's their LC lead for each one of those cohorts that's shown a level of engagement already. And then you can look at your value proposition, Scott, as to
exactly
what is it you get from IHCC they don't get from GA4GH or anywhere else.
Right.
Right. And again, it's not even about what they don't get, because I think those activities provide the landscape of needs and resources. It's really, again, to help them do the things they're trying to do in IHCC or in other collaborative activities, since we are very focused on those collaborations and bringing cohorts together, which while the others are too, this one is a little bit different in that. And we just have really been unsuccessul in gaining traction with the member cohorts to send their policy or even their process and SOP leads to this, and then unsuccessful where I had hoped we might get more traction with our colleagues in the other work groups, the Atlas, the scientific projects work group, to engage with us of what's happening in their groups and how can we really address the needs that they're seeing on the ground.
Yeah.
I think that, again, and I was really excited about the only other session I watched besides the opening plenary was the recording of the cohort in a box earlier this morning, because I was ill, but for the first time from a scientific perspective, it was put up front that policy needs to be considered first. And that's always been my fundamental belief, because you can't make it happen. You don't ask those questions up front. And if you ask them up front, it's a lot easier to do the science. And so I got a little excited that maybe now that a scientist has said that we would be able to move forward, and people are having that experience and they're learning that. And so I don't know if that was picked up at all in any of the other conversations, and if that will be successful in helping to generate the momentum that we need from the cohorts and from our projects to send people to this group to really help us, have an engine that can help support them driving forward.
So when GA4GH had their plenary sessions in Barcelona, and there was a breakout that Nikki moderated, there was a good, there was at least a dozen people in the room and another half dozen on the phone, all talking about policy issues. And I'm just wondering and I agree with you, we need to be IHC specific, but I wonder if we can sort of put some of this into the global policy forum perspective too, and help them achieve some of their objectives. If there's an objective around creating usable, valuable resources in terms of toolboxes and help desks and things like that, could we all work together to create that sort of value for
Absolutely. I'm open to any of those conversations. I think GA4GH has done a fabulous job in creating resources that are the best compilations and from the minds most actively thinking about these things. And so again, our policies are grounded in GA4GH resources so that we did not recreate the wheel, and would continue to do that. I think, again, we'll need to continue to think, and I have not talked to GA4GH policy folks in a while as I've been in a different community, and would be happy to see if there are needs where maybe we could tackle something for them, but we will still require our expertise from the cohort in order to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. And actually, that's the value we bring is our cohort connections, if you will, and that it's a problem we have. We have the connections in some senses for some of the activities of IHCC, for instance, around data and training and doing scientific experiments, but we're not getting it for the policy aspects. And I don't know if it's a time management, people are pulled in so many different directions. This is just low on their list of things to be involved in, where for some people, like Laura, such as yourself and Nikki, it's a high priority. So we're trying to get people involved, but we need to find those people where it is a high priority.
Right.
And
I'm wondering, Scott, if
I'm not sure each cohort has that individual, particularly in LMICs.
So I was just going to say the same thing, Scott, in the sense that if these are longitudinal projects and the groundwork was laid 10, 15, 20 years ago, they may have a kind of been there, done that approach, whereas a brand new cohort that's just been stood up now and is still in active recruitment and is thinking, the all of us type scenario, maybe has got a much different lens when it comes to policy and ethics than established ones. And we do know that one of Nikki's incentives in creating the Global Policy Forum was that she was being tapped by Phage and IHCC and ICDA to be on all their working groups. And it was like, there's not enough of me to go around. Why do I have to do it 3 times over? And then we found out that there's at least 8 groups doing this on a regular basis. So it might be good for us to say this kind of activity we'll do within that Global Policy Forum in the big sandbox. And these kind of applications, tools, starter kits, this is what we'll do specifically for cohorts, and we'll create that direct value. I don't know, Laura, does it make sense that perhaps many of them have kind of moved away from their original policy work?
I think in terms of an active participation, the ethics and policy folks likely have, but they must have someone on the ground, unless they're not recruiting anymore, that is actively involved in participant recruitment, and the agreements and the ongoing data sharing activities that they're doing might be more from a process perspective, but they would be the people with the on the ground knowledge of what a cohort can and cannot share, and what the process is to share data. And so I think there must be someone. I think, to your point, a lot of it could be folks whose primary interest is in the science and the research, and they have to do these other sort of extracurriculars on the side. And therefore, in IHCC meetings, when they choose where to go, they're going with the research interest. But I would hope, I would assume that with 100 and however many member cohorts that we have, many of them may be smaller, that we would have a higher percentage of folks that are especially with the larger cohorts.
Scott, could we reach out to our, so I came from data, there were a dozen folks over there. Could we reach out to our data reps or our science reps and ask them who is your policy person? Can you make a warm introduction for us rather than they get something like a cold request straight from IHCC?
No, I will, and I agree. I think that's a perfect approach. And I just think we've got a little less than 5 minutes now, but I would put down, reach out to other cohorts and work groups. I guess that's in there somewhere in the priorities. Is there anything we want to put in any of these other quadrants?
That's what I was going to ask, because I wasn't able to be at the meeting. I don't have Summit Insights.
So I'll give you one Summit insight. I think I heard in almost every session the word data sharing, either from a very computer oriented, this is how you move data from place to place securely, to policy issues, to this is how you have a successful longitudinal study or collaboration. So just, data, that was clear. So that's an easy one. But this gets me to the next thing around publications and collaboration opportunities. So we already have a collaboration opportunity, and that's the Global Policy Forum that we're involved in. Are there other things are we missing out on, or is that pretty much the state of the art right now for potential?
Well, we are. I mean, Nikki is leading our interactions with the other genomics relevant forums, as Peter mentioned, and so we have that as one of our goals, and we're making that actionable through the forum and participating and sharing what IHCC is doing and learning through that forum. So
Okay.
I'd
And
love
then
to
what
see
about-
collaboration opportunities with our projects and with our data atlas team, and with other folks that are inside, not necessarily policy to policy. Again, if we want to get this to work, we've got to be integrated.
I would just put that down as a bullet point: collaboration within IHCC, work groups and cohorts.
Yeah. I mean, the other two that really occur to me are ICDA and the GBMI. They seem like two, so some of the groups in that Global Policy Forum are quite different from IHCC's, whereas ICDA and GBMI do seem closer. Laura, you had a summit insight, you said, when you'd watched that recording. So your insight.
Oh yeah,
was,
that's true. I could put that.
Yeah, big celebration, first time.
And under funding opportunities, a few weeks ago, I did buy a few tickets for the Powerball $1 billion payoff, but that opportunity just didn't pan out. So I don't know if there's any others people would be. I had my plans laid out of how I'd spend the money, and believe me, there would be a sizable endowment to IHCC as part of that. So publications.
Peter, can you please remind me what GBMI is?
This is
global.
Maybe I've got it in the wrong order, but I think I've got the right letters. It's this Global Biobank
Meta-analysis initiative.
Yeah. And it's got a crossover with our members. It's coming at some of the same issues. They just published a paper recently. And I know Philip and somebody else are both involved with it. But
right, we share a lot of cohorts with them.
Great, thank you.
Is there a potential for a general policy publication of any sort?
Not if we can't get work going. I mean, I think there's a huge potential for lessons learned as we go forward, in terms of how to put collaborations together, where trouble spots are.
How about a publication on challenges faced not just within IHCC, but all these other groups? I mean, it may be the publication comes out from the collaborative view of.
Yeah, and Nikki did mention in there that that there is a concept underway for publication from the forum.
Something like that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
I apologize for interrupting. If we would like to take this discussion over to the next Zoom link where we'll be doing the report out, I'm going to end this session and jump into the webinar. Jeff is in there, and then I can prompt us to go live over in that report.